The man who will save New York from a Nazi bomb is pouring drinks in a smoky back room above an Italian bar in Lower Manhattan. His name, is Anthony Morelli. For the Federal Bureau of Investigation, he has a different file, a different past, and a very clear instruction. Smile, pour, listen, survive. Tonight, survival is not guaranteed. The room is narrow, low-ceilinged, soaked. On the peeling walls hang faded photographs of Naples and Palermo, a crucifix, and a small portrait of Benito Mussolini that nobody jokes about too loudly. Around the table, the most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest, not the one banging his glass and cursing President Roosevelt. It is the quiet one at the far end of the table, in a perfectly pressed gray suit. His name is Martin Koerger. Officially, he is a German import merchant. Unofficially, even Sao Nu. The way people might say wolf. Anthony feels Koerger watching him without looking up. Every step from the bar to the table feels like walking a tightrope over an abyss. His palms sweat inside the white bartender gloves. His heartbeat pounds in his ears, drowning out the drunken laughter. He sets down a fresh bottle of scotch. One of the men, fat and red-faced, grabs him by the wrist. "You heard the news, Tony? Another ship went down off the coast. German submarines. Bang. Just like that. Maybe one day, they do the same thing right here. Then Roosevelt will stop sending our boys to die for Jews and bankers." The table explodes with ugly laughter. Anthony forces a grin, the kind of crooked smile they expect from a man who lives on tips and trouble. "Long as they do not blow up this bar, gentlemen, I do not care who is sinking who," he says lightly. Inside, his stomach twists. He saw the headlines that morning. Another tanker burned off the Atlantic coast. Bodies in the water, oil on the waves. Somewhere out there, American sailors drowned, Somewhere in Washington, people assumed the front line was far away. They were wrong. It was right here, in this room, in these jokes, in that unopened brown envelope. Koerger finally speaks, his voice soft, almost polite. "Mr. Morelli, leave the bottle, close the door. No more customers tonight." The way he says it is not a request. It is a test. Anthony hesitates for a fraction of a second. That fraction, he gives a small shrug, as if relieved to cut the night short. He turns the key, lowers the shades, and comes back. Now he is inside the circle. Koerger slides the envelope closer. The other men lean forward. Cigarettes burn forgotten between yellowed fingers. "Gentlemen," Koerger says, "to win a war you do not always need more tanks or more planes. Sometimes you only need a small fire, in the right place." He opens the envelope. The contents are not much to look at. A folded map of New York, 2 black and white photographs, a hand-drawn sketch that means nothing to anyone who has never seen the Brooklyn waterfront at night. But Anthony has. He grew up on those piers. He recognizes the shape instantly, the Brooklyn Navy Yard. For a moment he stops breathing. He sees it in his mind as it was that very morning. Thousands of workers streaming through the gates, sparks showering from welders' torches. the half-finished hull of a battleship, towering over the dry dock like a steel cliff. He knows what that yard means. It is not just a collection of cranes and sheds. It is the artery feeding the American fleet. You cut that artery, and ships stop moving. Convoys stop sailing. Men stop coming home. Here, Quarger says calmly, tapping the map. And here. His finger moves uptown, to a symbol near the river that Anthony does not recognize instantly. It takes a second before the name surfaces. Iyao, Odoi, Eioiu. Hellgate Power Station. Power for the city. Power for the factories. Power for the shipyards. Power for the war. 2 strikes, Quarger continues. 1 to choke the fleet, 1 to blind the city. Explosions, fires, chaos, panic. Do you know what a blackout in New York will look like, gentlemen, when half the workers live 1 paycheck away from desperation? One of the Italians whistles softly. You can really do that? He asks. You can really hit those places? We can, Quarger answers. With your help. With your patriotism. The word twists in the air like smoke. Patriotism. But whose country are they serving? Anthony feels the room tightening, shrinking. The air thickens. Someone laughs. Someone crosses himself. Someone mutters a toast in Italian. His own hands rest on the back of a chair, knuckles white beneath the gloves. He knows he has to see the photographs. If he leans in too eagerly, they will wonder why a bartender cares about industrial targets. If he hangs back, they will wonder why he is afraid. Either way, suspicion is death. Quarger makes the decision for him. Come here, Tony, he says without looking up. You are not just a bartender. You are one of us. You have eyes. You can tell me if these places are crowded. Many workers? Many soldiers? Anthony steps closer, slowly, casually, as if maps of critical infrastructure are passed around every night between drinks. His pulse hammers. Each heartbeat counts seconds he might not have. He studies the photographs. One shows the yard, cranes reaching into the sky, warships under construction. The other shows the power station, its smokestacks like black fingers scraping the clouds. The handwritten note on the margin says only one chilling thing. Maximum effect. Minimum warning. His brain splits in 2. One half is the FBI informant, burning every detail into memory. The other half is the man trying not to show the terror rising in his chest. Busy, Anthony says carefully. All day, all night. I have a cousin there. He says they work in shifts, like a machine that never sleeps. One of the men laughs. Then it will be a big show when it blows, eh? The others snicker. Quarger does not. He just watches Anthony as if measuring his soul. You have a cousin in the yard, Quarger repeats. That is interesting. Very interesting. The sentence lands like a knife laid gently on the table. Anthony realizes he has just made a mistake. He has invented a relative, a detail that can be checked, a thread that can be pulled. If they start asking questions on the docks, if someone says they never heard of this cousin, the very thin wall between Anthony and a shallow grave in the East River will collapse. He forces a shrug. Everybody in Brooklyn has a cousin in the yard, or a brother, or an uncle. They are building half the Navy there. You throw a stone, you hit a ship worker. The room relaxes a fraction. Quarger's eyes stay sharp. Good, the German says. Then you understand what is at stake. Roosevelt thinks he can send ships to Europe faster than we can sink them. We will show him he is wrong. He folds the map again, carefully, precisely, like a man putting away a weapon. The envelope disappears into his briefcase. The room exhales. The moment of revelation is over. On the surface, they are once again just men in a bar, talking treason over whiskey. For Anthony, nothing will ever be just again. An hour later, when the meeting breaks up, the men leave in pairs and singles, staggering down the stairs into the humid New York night. Somewhere outside, a radio plays swing music. Somewhere farther downtown, couples dance, soldiers laugh, taxis honk, neon signs buzz. The city glows, unaware that its heartbeat has just been marked on a German saboteurs map. Anthony stays behind to close. He wipes the table where the map rested, as if he could erase the fingerprints of history with a damp rag. His hands tremble so badly, he drops a glass. It shatters on the floor. He stares at the shards, at his own reflection broken into a dozen pieces. When he finally steps into the alley behind the bar, the noise of the city hits him like a wave. He leans against the brick wall, sucking in the night air, fighting the urge to throw up. The smell of garbage, spilled beer, and distant ocean salt mixes with the odor of coal smoke from the power plants upriver. Kruger's voice echoes, "Ah, EU." 2 strikes, 1 to choke the fleet, 1 to blind the city. He imagines the Navy Yard in flames. He imagines Hell Gate blown apart, the city plunging into darkness, sirens wailing, people screaming, the skyline cut to black. He imagines the front-page headlines, the body counts, the politicians demanding to know how this could happen in the most powerful city in the world. Then he imagines something worse. He imagines that it will happen, and nobody will ever know that a handful of men in a back room planned it all. Anthony forces himself to walk. Not run, not stagger. Walk. A man who has finished a long shift, not a man carrying the future of the city in his head. He turns the corner and sees the car. Black. Government plates. Parked too neatly under a dead street lamp. The silhouette of a man in a suit behind the wheel. For a fraction of a second, cold panic grips his throat. If that car belongs to Kruger's people, if they have guessed, if they are waiting to bundle him in and drive him to some basement where questions have only one possible, final answer. Then the driver steps out, and Anthony recognizes the face. Clean-shaven. Hat tilted just so. Overcoat a little too formal for this neighborhood. Special Agent Michael Donnelly, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Donnelly's expression does not match the face Anthony knows from the safe house meetings. On those nights, he is calm, clinical, a man who treats espionage like accounting, with higher stakes. Tonight there is naked urgency in his eyes. "Get in," Donnelly says quietly. "Now." "No hello?" Anthony tries to joke, but his voice cracks. "Get in." Anthony slides into the back seat. The door shuts with a heavy final thud. The car pulls away, merging into the late-night traffic heading toward the dark outline of the East River. "Talk," Donnelly says, eyes fixed on the road. "Everything. Now. Start with the envelope." Words spill out. The map. The photographs. The targets. The questions about his cousin. He recounts the conversation in clipped, shaking sentences, each one another nail in a coffin that has not been built yet, but already waits for the city. Donnelly listens without interrupting. Only once does he react, when Anthony says Brooklyn Navy Yard and Hell Gate Power Station in the same breath. His jaw tightens. His knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. When Anthony finishes, the car is on the bridge. The river shines black beneath them, cut with reflections of shipyard lights and factory chimneys. Somewhere down there, tugs push barges. Somewhere beyond, in the dark ocean, German submarines Hunt. Finally, Donnelly speaks. You understand what you just told me, right? He says quietly. If they pull this off, it will not be another headline on page 3. It will be the kind of thing history books open with. Pearl Harbor on the Hudson. Anthony swallows. Then stop it, he says. You are the FBI. You have guns, badges, judges, all that. Go grab them. Donnelly shakes his head. We cannot grab anybody yet. We do not know all the names. We do not know all the links. We do not know who actually plants the bombs, who builds them, who hides them. We move too early, we get a few small fish, and someone else will carry the plan across the finish line. We need more. We need everything. Anthony stares at the back of Donnelly's head. I gave you everything, he says. What else do you want? There is a long silence. Korager, Donnelly says, at last. We need Korager. We need whoever is above him. And we need proof solid enough that when we go to the Attorney General and say there is a Nazi bomb plot in New York City, nobody laughs us out of the room as hysterical. The city grows larger ahead of them, a jagged wall of light and shadow. Anthony suddenly understands what Donnelly is really saying. They are not pulling him out. He is going back in. You want me to sit with those men again? Anthony whispers. You want me to smile and pour and pretend that blowing up half the city is just another night's work? Donnelly's voice is flat. You want to see those ships burn for real? You want to see that power station go up at change of shift, when thousands of guys are punching out and going home? You want to read the casualty lists and wonder if your imaginary cousin is on them? Because that is what happens if you walk away now. Anthony looks out at the black water. He remembers the laughter in the back room. He remembers the way Kiarger's eyes never stopped studying him. He remembers the map and the note in the margin. Maximum effect, minimum warning. He also remembers something else. A different room, a different night. The first time Donnelly came to him, weeks ago, when all this was just a theoretical offer and not a death sentence. You came here to escape them, Donnelly had said. They followed you anyway. You want to let them win twice? Now the war has found him again, in the one place he thought was safe. The car leaves the bridge and dives back into the city's canyons. Sirens wail somewhere in the distance. Maybe a fire. Maybe an accident. Tonight it sounds like a warning the city itself cannot quite understand. At a red light, Donnelly finally turns and looks Anthony in the eye. This is bigger than the FBI, he says quietly. Bigger than you. Bigger than me. There are men in Berlin who believe this city will burn. You are sitting in the one car that can prove them wrong. The light turns green. The car rolls forward. Behind them, the Brooklyn Navy Yard glitters in the dark like a promise. Ahead of them, smokestacks loom against the sky, feeding electricity into a metropolis that has no idea that somewhere in its veins, a bomb plot is already taking shape. Between those 2 points, between fleet and power, between darkness and light, one man sits in the back of a government car, realizing that the next time he steps into that smoky back room, one wrong word, one wrong look, one wrong pause will not just cost him his life. It will cost his city its heartbeat. This second chapter should focus on recruitment, tests, and inner conflict. But it is not possible to honestly rate it near 10 out of 10 yet, because the text itself is not written. Only the plan and expectations exist so far. So quality, emotional impact, and narrative rhythm still need to be created and then judged in context of the whole story. To move as close as possible to a 10 out of 10, the chapter will need a strong opening hook with immediate tension, a clear central character arc, emotionally loaded choices, and at least one sharp mini-climax by the end that sets up the infiltration phase. Chapter 2. The Making of Ghosts. The knock on the door does not sound like trouble. 3 short, polite taps. The kind a neighbor might use to borrow sugar or complain about the radio being too loud. But in this apartment on the Lower East Side, at this hour, in this city at war, every sound carries a question behind it. Who knows I live here? Anthony stands motionless in the narrow hallway, eyes fixed on the door. The meeting with Kuarger still burns in his mind. He has barely slept. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the map of the Navy Yard and the power station. Every time he opens them, he half expects to find German gunmen in his kitchen. The knock comes again. Same rhythm, same deliberate calm. He forces himself to breathe, to move, to be the man his cover says he is. An overworked bartender who has seen too much, who trusts too little, who hides his fear behind sarcasm and cigarettes. "Who is it?" he calls. "Donnelly," a voice answers quietly. "Open up." That name does not relax him. If the Federal Bureau of Investigation has come to his door this early, something went very right last night, or very wrong. He unlatches the chain and opens the door just enough to see the corridor. Donnelly stands there in his usual dark suit, hat in hand. Behind him, to Anthony's surprise, is another man. Older, taller, with a square jaw and the kind of posture the Army drills into people. His eyes are pale gray and do not look tired, even this early in the morning. "Can we come in?" Donnelly asks. Anthony hesitates for a beat, then steps aside. "Sure," he says. "If I say no, you kick the door in and put me on the floor anyway, right?" "Only if you make me nervous," Donnelly says, without smiling. The older man walks in without comment. He looks around the small apartment, taking in every detail: the cheap furniture, the crucifix above the bed, the photograph of Anthony's family on the shelf. The photograph is a lie, built in a studio, a staged collection of faces from different case files. Anthony wonders how it looks through the eyes of a man whose job is to tell truth from lies. "This is him?" the stranger asks. "This is him," Donnelly replies. "Anthony Morelli, dock rat, bartender, part-time pain in my neck." The older man turns fully to Anthony. "In this room," he says calmly, "you can drop the act. My name is Percy Foxworth." The name lands with weight. Special agent in charge, the man who owns Federal Bureau of Investigation headquarters in New York, the man whose signature can change lives or erase them. Anthony had imagined Foxworth many times. Some faceless bureaucrat behind a big desk. Some stiff in a 3-piece suit who thought the war was something that happened in newspapers. This Foxworth does not match the picture. His tie is slightly crooked, like he put it on in a hurry. His trench coat is creased from actual use, not from hanging in a wardrobe. There is a small coffee stain on his shirt cuff. Details that say he works. Details that say he has seen things outside conference rooms. "You understand why we are here," Foxworth says. Anthony folds his arms. "I told Donnelly everything in the car," he says. "If you are here to say thank you, you could have sent flowers." Foxworth does not flinch at the sarcasm. "Last night," he says, "you stood in a room with a German agent connected to military intelligence. You listened to him outline a plan to cripple our Navy and our power grid. You walked out alive with the details in your head. You did that without a badge, without a gun, without backup inside those walls. He pauses. If anybody is sending flowers, it is us. Anthony waits for the praise to turn into demands. It does not take long. We are not going to stop them today, Foxworth says. You know that already. You heard Kjarger. That was not a one-night conversation. That was the beginning of something bigger. Something he has been building for months, maybe years. Men like that do not bet all their chips on one meeting in one bar. You want me to go back, Anthony says flatly. We want you to go deeper, Foxworth corrects. Not just for us, for others. Others? Anthony repeats. Donnelly steps closer, pulling a folder from his coat. You are not the only one we have put inside the fire, he says. Until now, we kept you all separate. If one goes bad, the others stay clean. But after last night, we do not have that luxury. If Kjarger's plan is what we think it is, we have to start connecting the lines. He opens the folder on Anthony's small kitchen table. 3 photographs stare up. The first shows a man in his 30s, broad-shouldered, with a boxer's nose and dark, wary eyes. He is standing on a dock, a coil of rope in one hand, cigarette in the other. The caption underneath reads, Patrick O'Rourke, Longshoreman, Brooklyn. The second is of a slim man in a white coat, leaning over a customer in a barber chair. His smile is quick, almost too charming, but his eyes are locked on something outside the frame, calculating. The caption, Salvatore Saldaluca, barber, Mulberry Street. The third is a woman, mid-20s, hair pulled back in a simple knot. No makeup, no jewelry. Her clothes are plain, but her posture is straight. She sits at a table covered with papers and typewriter parts. Behind her, a wall lined with filing cabinets. The caption, Marta Vogel, Secretary, German Aid Committee. Anthony looks from the photographs to the 2 men. You are building a club, he says slowly. Is that it? A little society of people stupid enough to sit across from Nazis and smile? People brave enough, Foxworth says quietly. But no, not a club, a ring. He taps the photographs, one by one. O'Rourke works the Brooklyn docks. He sees which cargo goes on which ship. He hears which captains complain about sabotage, about accidents that were not accidents. He drinks where the longshoremen drink. He knows which of them would take German money to look the other way. Tap. DeLuca cuts hair for half the Italian neighborhood. Dock owners, policemen, small-time crooks, men who call Mussolini the man who made the trains run on time, like it is a compliment. People talk in his chair. He listens. Tap. Vogel sits in an office where charity money flows to supposedly help German families in need. Some of that money takes strange detours. Some of those letters are written in very careful language. She files them all. She remembers. Then Foxworth pushes the photographs together, edges touching. Separate, they are informants, he says. Together they are a net. Anthony stares at the woman's face. She German? He asks. Born in Hamburg, Donnelly answers. Came here in 1938. Father arrested by the Gestapo. She does not know if he is dead or alive. Her uncle runs the charity she works for. She pretends to believe his stories. He pretends not to see her copying names at night. Anthony imagines that office. The constant fear. The sound of footsteps in the corridor. The knowledge that one creak of a drawer at the wrong time could mean prison, interrogation, deportation. He realizes something else. None of them wear badges either. What do you want from me? He asks. We want you to be the bridge, Foxworth says. You are in the bars where the talk turns ugly. You are in the back rooms where Quarriger tests his recruits. O'Rourke hears which ships are due for repairs at the Navy Yard, which nights the guards are thinner. De Luca hears which Italian businessmen hold meetings with visitors from the consulate. Vogel sees the money move, the lists of donors, the travel schedules. He leans in. Right now, all of that information is just noise. Pieces scattered across a city of 7 million souls. We do not need more noise. We need a pattern. We need someone who can take what they hear, what they see, what they risk, and tie it to what you hear in those rooms. Anthony feels the weight of the photographs pressing down on him like extra hands on his shoulders. "And if I say no?" he asks quietly. "For you?" Donnelly says. "Nothing happens immediately. You go back to tending bar. You pretend you never walked into that back room. You hope Quarriger never wonders why his bartender asks the wrong question at the wrong time. Maybe he never does. Maybe he does. It is a coin toss." He pauses. "For the city? For the men on those ships? For the workers at the power station? For their families? If you say no, somebody else flips that coin for them too." Foxworth does not argue. He just lets the silence stretch until Anthony wants to fill it with something other than fear. "How do I talk to them?" Anthony asks finally, nodding at the photographs. "These people, your net." "You already met one," Donnelly says. "You just did not know it." He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small object, placing it gently on the table. A razor. Not the cheap, chipped kind Anthony uses behind the bar to open crates. A professional straight razor, polished steel, black handle, with a tiny nick on one edge. Anthony remembers it suddenly. The barber down the block. The one who never asked personal questions, but always seemed to know when sailors had been in port, when officers came through the neighborhood, when German voices were heard in back rooms. "Sal De Luca," Donnelly says. "You think we let you pick that bar on your own?" Anthony sits back, stunned. "All those times I went in for a shave," he says slowly. "All those times he said, 'You work nights, huh? Tough business. You hear interesting things.' That was not small talk. That was a lifeline," Donnelly says. "He has been under for 2 years, longer than you. When you talked, you were both holding the same end of a rope without knowing it." The realization is dizzying. Anthony had felt alone all this time, alone at the tables, alone walking home at night, alone in the car with Donnelly. Now he understands that somewhere close, stirring foam in a shaving bowl, another man was carrying pieces of the same invisible war. "What about the Irish?" Anthony asks. "The one on the docks?" Donnelly smiles faintly for the first time that morning. "He is more stubborn than you," he says. "Name is O'Rourke. Used to run with men in Belfast who knew how to hide guns in church basements and explosives in milk churns. Came here telling himself he was done with all that. Then he watched newsreels of German bombers over London and realized the same game was starting all over again, just with different flags." He nods toward the third photograph. "And Vogel. She is the one who scares me most." "Why?" Anthony asks. "Because she has no exit," Foxworth answers. "If we pull you out, you go back to your bar. If we pull O'Rourke out, he goes back to moving cargo. If we pull her out, she has nowhere to go. Her entire life here sits behind that desk, under that letterhead. Her uncle owns her job, her references, her rent. If he ever smells what she is really doing, there is no quiet way to fix that." Anthony picks up Marta's photograph. Her eyes look straight at the camera. She does not look like a hero. She looks like every other tired, serious woman riding the subway with a lunch pail. "Do they know about me?" he asks. "Not yet," Foxworth says. "We kept you all in separate compartments for a reason. But after last night, compartments are a luxury. If you keep going in, if K.R.J. really trusts you, you are going to start hearing details that matter to them directly. Ship names O'Rourke needs. Donor names Vogel needs. Italian businessmen DeLuca needs. At some point, you will all have to know there are other hands trying to hold this line." He looks Anthony in the eye. "You will not meet them in a room with an American flag and a handshake. You will meet them in places that look like chance: a barbershop, a dockside tavern, a church basement. You will talk in code so simple a child would miss it. You will never use the word FBI out loud. Ever." Anthony sets the photograph down. "What is the code?" he asks. Donnelly reaches into the folder again and pulls out a small folded card. On it, in neat handwriting, is a list that looks like a grocery order. Razor blades, 10 cents, matches, 2 boxes, coffee, always black, shave, no cologne. "At DeLuca's," Donnelly says, "you sit in his chair and order this exactly. He will nick your neck just a little. That means he heard something. You cough twice. That means you did too. He wipes the razor once on the left side of the towel, twice on the right, depending on whether he needs ship names or meeting places." He turns the card over. A second list: different items, dock terms, rope lengths, crate markings. "O'Rourke will be harder to get to," he continues. "Too many eyes on the docks. But if you order 4 fathoms of rope with the red paint still on it, he will find a way to bump into you at the tavern after his shift. If he says the rope is frayed, it means something on the yard looks wrong. If he says it is clean-cut, it means sabotage." Anthony memorizes the phrases as they are spoken. They are ridiculous in a way, life and death attached to the language of haircuts and rope. But that is how this war is going to be fought here. Not with bayonets and trenches, but with words in plain sight. Foxworth studies him. "This is the point where most men realize they can still walk away," he says. "Before the codes, before the faces, before they become part of something nobody will ever know about." Anthony laughs once, bitterly. "You knocked on the wrong door if you wanted a man who walks away," he says. Donnelly picks up the empty coffee cup from the table, inspecting the ring it left. "Then understand this," he says quietly. "From now on, there are 3 lives you have to carry every time you walk into that back room. Yours, theirs, and the lives of people who will never even know there was a back room." He points toward the window. Outside, through the thin curtains, the city is waking up. Delivery trucks rumble. Kids shout. A woman leans out a window to shake crumbs from a tablecloth onto the street. Somewhere far off, a ship's horn moans on the river. "You are not just passing information anymore," Donnelly says. "You are the difference between a secretly foiled plot and a crater where the Navy Yard used to be. Between a quiet arrest and a power station exploding during a shift change." Foxworth takes his coat. "We will not order you," he says. "We cannot. You are not on our payroll. You are not in our files. Officially, you do not work for us at all. If you die, there will be no medal for your mother, no folded flag, no letter from the president. That is the truth." He opens the door. "You go back to the bar tonight," he adds. "K.R.J. will watch you. He will talk to you like nothing happened, or he will test you. Either way, you do what you did before. You pour, you listen, you live. Donnelly pauses beside him. And tomorrow, he says, you go for a shave. The door closes behind them. Anthony stands alone in the small apartment, the photographs still on the table. He looks at each face in turn. O'Rourke, the man who thought he had left war behind on another island. DeLuca, the barber who knows more about his customers than their wives. Vogel, the secretary who files letters with one hand and copies names with the other. Ghosts in plain sight. He picks up the razor that DeLuca used as a signal. The steel winks in the morning light. He realizes that somewhere in this city, these three strangers are having their own mornings, brushing their teeth, drinking their coffee, buttoning their shirts, knowing or about to know that they are no longer alone in this. The map from last night is gone, back in Corriger's case. But a different map is forming now in Anthony's head. Lines of risk, lines of trust, dots that represent people who have quietly decided that this is their war too. At the edge of that mental map, 2 points burn brighter than the rest. Brooklyn Navy Yard, Hellgate Power Station. 2 targets, 4 ghosts. One city sleepwalking toward a disaster only a handful of invisible hands can stop. Anthony sets the razor down. Then he reaches for his coat. There is a bar to open. There is a barber to visit. And there is a bomb plot taking shape in the shadows, waiting for someone like him to step fully into the dark. The first cut comes before the first word. The bell over the barbershop door jingles as Anthony steps in. The air is thick with talc, bay rum, and the faint metallic tang of hot metal. Mirrors line the walls, throwing reflections back and forth until it feels like the room has 100 sets of eyes. Most of them are harmless. 2 of them are not. Salvatore DeLuca works on a customer in the main chair, razor dancing in easy arcs along the man's jaw. He does not look up when Anthony walks in. He just jerks his chin toward the empty chair by the window. "Be right with you," he says in a sing-song tone. Anthony sits. A newspaper lies folded on the small table. Headline about fighting in North Africa. Rommel pushes, Allies retreat, maps of deserts that feel a world away. And yet, as Anthony knows too well now, they are not. Not really. The front line runs through places like this. A moment later, DeLuca's voice floats out, casual, bored. "You want the usual, Tony?" Anthony studies his reflection. Dark circles under the eyes. Jaw set too tight. "Closer," he says. "Got a long night ahead." "Do not we all?" DeLuca mutters. He finishes with the other customer, sends him out with a slap on the back and a joke about not getting into fights. Then he turns, straightens his white coat, and nods at Anthony. "Come on," he says. "Sit up, chin high. Let me make you pretty for your rich friends." Anthony settles into the chair. The leather squeaks. The world narrows to mirror chair barber. DeLuca drapes the cloth across his chest, tucks it in. Leaning close, he lowers his voice just enough that only Anthony can hear. "Long night, huh?" he says. "You hear interesting things?" There is a razor in his hand now. The blade catches the light. This is the code. This is the line they talked about in the kitchen. Anthony breathes once, steadying himself. "People like to talk when the door's closed," he says. "I hear things." The razor touches his skin. The nick is quick, just enough to sting. A dot of blood blooms, bright red against white foam. DeLuca swears theatrically. "Look at that," he says loudly. "I am losing my touch. You boys move too much, always in a hurry." He wipes the blade on the towel. once on the left side. Ship names, yard business. Anthony coughs twice. He feels the shift. Imperceptible to anyone else, huge to him. The chatter in the shop fades to a blur. The scrape of the razor becomes a metronome, counting out beats between secrets. "Who was there?" DeLuca asks under his breath as he moves along the jawline. "The German," Anthony murmurs. "Kjarger." He opened the map. "Navy Yard. Hellgate." The razor pauses for half a heartbeat. Just enough to tell Anthony that the words hit. "We knew they would look," DeLuca says. "We did not know they got that close. You see any markings? Any gate numbers?" "Not yet," Anthony replies. He wanted to know if the yard is crowded. If the power plant shifts, never stop. "Do they?" DeLuca asks. "You asking as my barber? Or as my confessor?" Anthony mutters. DeLuca grunts. "I ask as the man who has to look O'Rourke in the eye tonight and tell him whether he should start sleeping with a suitcase packed." He scrapes away more foam. "You go back soon?" he asks. "Tonight?" Anthony says. "Then listen harder," DeLuca whispers. "And smile more. Men like him only trust other men who laugh at the right jokes." Anthony closes his eyes as the blade slides along his neck. Smile more. Laugh on cue. Learn to hate yourself in a new language. When the shave is done, DeLuca slaps his cheeks with cologne, more force than necessary. "You are good to go," he says in a normal tone. "Try not to bleed on your customers." On the way out, Anthony drops a dime in the tip jar. "Thanks, Sal," he says. "Anytime," DeLuca replies. "And Tony?" Anthony looks back. "Next time," DeLuca says quietly, "do not let them see your hands shake when they talk about killing people you drink with." The day moves like a film strip running too fast. Anthony works the bar, smiles at regulars, pours drinks without really tasting the smells or hearing the jokes. His mind loops the same images over and over. The razor, the map, the cranes of the Navy Yard, the power station smokestacks. By the time night drops heavy over the city, his nerves feel strung like piano wire. The back room is fuller tonight. Kjarger sits in his usual place, gray suit immaculate, cigarette burning down with mathematical calm. Around the table, new faces mix with old ones. Anthony recognizes two from previous nights, an Italian scrap metal dealer who cheats on his taxes and his wife with equal enthusiasm, and a former cop who left the force under a cloud and now talks about real law and order whenever he gets drunk. The new men are quieter. They watch more than they talk. Their suits are better. Their shoes are cleaner. These are not neighborhood braggarts. These are businessmen. That is worse. Anthony moves between them with bottle and glass, listening. For too long, one of the new men is saying in accented English, "This country has been run by people who do not understand strength. They think they can fight a total war with half measures. Blackouts only when the newspapers scream about submarines. Guards at the yards, but underpaid, undertrained. It is pathetic." "We do our part," the ex-cop says. "We keep the unions in line. We make sure the right boys get the jobs. If someone needs to look the other way, we find him." "And now," the scrap dealer adds gleefully, "you are telling us there is a way to do something real, not just talk." Kjarger smokes. Let them talk themselves into a fever. He knows patience. When the glasses are full and the room hums with the low buzz of conspiratorial excitement, he taps ash into the tray and speaks. "Docks are not fortresses," he says. "They are busy places. Many men, many trucks, many crates. Things come in, things go out. Sometimes things do not match the papers. Sometimes boxes are not what the label says. This is normal. Chaos is cover. He nods toward the ex-cop. You know this, he says. You spent years answering calls down there. How many times did you see men carrying something they were not supposed to carry? The ex-cop laughs. Every day, he says. Sometimes I took a piece. Sometimes I pretended I saw nothing. That is how the world works. Quarger's eyes glitter. Exactly, he says. Now imagine you have a crate, heavy, marked as machine parts. Looks like every other crate, but inside is not machine parts. Inside is a surprise. Where can that crate sit for a few days without anyone asking questions? In a corner, the scrap dealer says. In the dark, under other crates. You got the right foreman. Nobody touches it. And how do you get the crate there? Quarger asks mildly. The room goes quiet. This is the real question. Anthony feels everyone's attention shift, just a little. This is the moment when talk of ideology meets the hard work of logistics. This is the hinge between fantasy and crime. One of the new businessmen clears his throat. My trucks go in every week, he says slowly. We haul coal, sometimes scrap. We could take on an extra crate. Papers get stamped. Nobody looks twice. Another shrugs. A dock worker owes me money, he says. He signs anything I put in front of him if he thinks it will keep me away from his house. The ex-cop leans back. You pay the right guard, he says, and you could walk a tank through the gate as long as it looks like a delivery from the right company. Quarger smiles faintly. Good, he says. You see the possibilities. This is why I came to you. You are men of influence. Men of access. Men who can move things. He turns his head. Tony, he says. Another round. Anthony's heart gives a single hard thump. He moves to the table, pouring, feeling Quarger's gaze like a hand at the back of his neck. You work near the docks, yes? Quarger says, almost lazily. Many sailors, many workers, many stories. I pour drinks for whoever has money, Anthony says. Sailors talk too much. Workers fight too much. Stories come free. What do they say about the Navy Yard security? Quarger asks. In the tiny pause before the answer, Anthony can hear his own breath. If he says it is too tight, too dangerous, too many guards, he looks like a man trying to push them away. If he says it is lax, easy, wide open, he might encourage them more than the Federal Bureau of Investigation can handle. Find the middle. The guards are there, Anthony says carefully, but they are tired. They work long hours. Some of them do not like the pay. Some of them do not like being told to search every lunch pail and toolbox. People find ways to make their lives easier. Like, Quarger prompts. Like letting regular faces through without checking every time, Anthony says. Like taking a cigarette instead of checking a badge properly. Like believing that nobody is crazy enough to try something big in a place that busy. The scrap dealer laughs. America, he says. Everything is too big to fail, until it does. The room relaxes again. The spotlight moves. Quarger stubs out his cigarette and lights another. Here is how it will work, he says. The men lean in. Anthony does not move, but every nerve is tilted toward the center of the table. A crate will arrive, Quarger says. Not from here, from farther away. It will move through hands that do not know what they carry. A shipping clerk in one city, a train conductor in another, a dock foreman here in New York. To them, it is just one more box. He nods to the businessman with the coal trucks. You will pick it up, he says. You will deliver it to the yard as if it were scrap metal or machine parts. Your papers will be in order. Your drivers will know nothing. If anything goes wrong, they can truthfully say they were just doing their job. He turns to the ex-cop. You will make sure the right guard is on duty at the gate that day, he says. You will make sure his pocket is heavy and his conscience is light. You will make sure he remembers that his wife likes nice things that cost more than his salary. He looks at the scrap dealer. You will provide a place for the crate to sit, he says. Not too obvious, not too hidden. Somewhere a man with a lunch pail can stand for a few minutes without being asked why. Then his gaze returns to Anthony. And you, he says softly, will tell me when the yard is most alive, when the most men are there, when a single explosion will not just damage ships, but shatter morale. I want a time when the Americans will feel it like a fist in the mouth. The words land heavy. Anthony feels the room spinning slightly. The air is too thin. He forces himself to frown, as if thinking not about horror, but about practicality. You do not want change of shift, he says. Too much movement, too many eyes. You want the middle of a shift, when everybody's busy, when nobody expects anything. But you hit them then. You hit workers, not officers. You hit poor men who had no say in the war. It is a risk, pushing back even a little. But he needs room. He needs time. One of the businessmen snorts. War hurts someone, he says. Better them than us. True, Quarger says. But we are not anarchists. We have a goal. We do not need a slaughter of nobodies. We need fear. We need disruption. We need delay. If a ship's departure is postponed by even a week, that is millions of pounds of supplies that do not reach England. That is convoys that sail lighter. That is the difference between a city surviving a bombing or not. He thinks a moment. Find me a day, he tells Anthony. A day when important ships sit in the yard, when officers visit, when inspectors walk the docks, when workers feel watched, but the watchers are still human. He smiles thinly. Bring me that day, and I will bring the rest. Anthony nods slowly, as if considering nothing more serious than schedules. I can listen, he says. Guys talk. They complain. I cannot promise more. You will, Kjarger says, in a tone that makes it clear that the word promise is purely decorative. The conversation shifts. They talk about politics, about ration cards, about rumors from the Eastern Front. They make ugly jokes about Jews, about Roosevelt, about British cowardice. Anthony laughs where he is supposed to laugh, grimaces where he is supposed to grimace. His palms leave faint, damp prints on the glass when he sets it down. Later, as the men drift out, Kjarger signals him to stay. The others leave. The door clicks shut. For the first time, they are alone. You did well, Kjarger says. Anthony shrugs. I poured drinks, he says. I repeated gossip. You did more, Kjarger replies. You listened like a man who understands what is at stake. Most people do not. They live in newspapers. They think this war is numbers and headlines. You know better. Anthony feels the compliment, like bait on a hook. I grew up around the docks, he says. You see who eats and who does not, who gets drafted and who does not. War is never just numbers. Exactly, Kjarger says. You are not like the fools upstairs. They think this bar is the whole world. They will die wondering what happened. You, I think, want to be on the side that writes history, not the side that gets written about. It is a test, a different kind. History does not care about bartenders, Anthony says, or dock workers, or barbers. It cares about men in uniforms and men in suits. Kjarger leans back. History cares about whoever makes the important decisions before uniforms and suits stand in front of microphones, he says. You are close to important decisions now, whether you admit it or not. He studies Anthony's face. Tell me something, he says. Why are you still here? A man like you could enlist, put on a uniform, go die in a desert or a jungle for a cause you do not understand. Yet you stay. Why? Anthony feels the trap closing. Because an FBI agent knocked on my door. Because there is a German machinist somewhere whose brother died in a camp. Because a woman files letters at night, hoping no one hears her heart beating. None of those answers will work. Because I have seen what happens when stupid men with flags tell smart men with families what to die for, he says, instead. I had enough of that in the old country. At least here. I choose my own risks. Kruger's eyes sharpen for a second. Then he smiles. We are not so different, he says. You and I both know loyalty is earned, not demanded. We both know there are men who deserve what is coming. You are angry. I see it. You hide it behind jokes, but it is there. Anthony does not have to fake that part. He is angry. Angry at ships burning. Angry at politicians dining while dock workers die. Angry at being turned into a weapon against people who speak his language, drink his drinks, share his jokes. You ever feel like the wrong people are in charge? Quarger asks softly. Every day, Anthony says. Good, Quarger replies. Anger is useful. So is intelligence. So is proximity. You have all three. Use them. Find my day. He stands, picking up his briefcase. Soon, he adds. This war does not wait. When Anthony steps out into the alley behind the bar, the night feels colder than when he went in. The city hums, streetlights buzz. Somewhere, a siren wails. Somewhere else, a couple argues in a tenement window. The ordinary noises of a great, indifferent metropolis. He walks, hands in pockets, head down. On a side street, near the docks, a figure detaches from a doorway. Patrick O'Rourke is broader than his photograph suggested. Barrel chest, thick forearms roped with muscle. He leans against the brick, cigarette glowing between fingers. Hell of a night to be taking a walk alone, O'Rourke says in a low voice. Hear the same about working the docks, Anthony answers. O'Rourke flicks ash. You look like a man who had to laugh at the wrong jokes, he says. You look like a man who had to move the wrong crates, Anthony replies. They stand in silence for a moment. Two strangers bound by secrets neither can say aloud. Word is, O'Rourke says finally, somebody wants a guest in my yard. Something heavy. Something nobody is supposed to open. Anthony's throat goes dry. They are drawing the map, he says. They want a day when it hurts most. O'Rourke spits on the pavement. Ship schedules change, he says. Crews get sick. Machines break. Hard to promise a day when I do not know what the sea will do. You know more than they do, Anthony says. You hear which ships are coming in for repairs, which ones are full of officers, which ones keep getting the good steel while the others get scrap. O'Rourke's jaw works. I have men on those ships, he says quietly. Friends, cousins, guys I played ball with. You telling me I am supposed to help aim a bomb at them? I am telling you that if we do not learn their target, Anthony says, they will pick one without us, and they will hit it. The wind off the river cuts between the buildings. Donnelly knows, O'Rourke asks. He knows enough to be scared, Anthony says. O'Rourke drops his cigarette, grinds it under his heel. Then we listen, he says. We listen, we lie, we smile, we hope to God we are better at this game than they are. He turns to go, then stops. "You Catholics?" he asks abruptly. Anthony blinks. "Yeah," he says. "Tell your priest you are working late," O'Rourke mutters. "Whatever comes next, there will not be much time for confession." He disappears into the night. Anthony walks on, the city stretching around him like a giant, sleeping animal. In a cramped office across town, Marta Vogel sits alone, the only light a desk lamp. Her uncle's handwriting sprawls across a telegram from friends in South America. She copies names into a small notebook, pressed flat under a ledger, hand steady, eyes alert. In a barber shop whose door is now locked, Sal DeLuca sharpens his razor with slow, careful strokes, steel whispering against leather. On a German-coded message routing through neutral territory, a short report travels: local assets promising, dock access feasible, target selection underway. And in a worn room in a brick building near Foley Square, Percy Foxworth stares at a wall map of New York marked with colored pins, wondering which dot will become a crater if his ghosts fail. Inside the wolf's den, the plan is taking shape. Outside it, 4 people no one will ever call heroes are trying to stay alive long enough to break it. The news does not come in a whisper. It comes in a laugh. A big, open, delighted bark of laughter in the back room of the bar, thick with smoke and the smell of spilled whiskey. The laugh belongs to the scrap dealer, but the joy behind it belongs to Martin Kroeger. "Say that again," the scrap dealer wheezes, wiping his eyes. "Say it again, for luck." Kroeger allows himself the smallest of smiles. "The Americans," he repeats calmly, "have scheduled a full dress inspection of the Brooklyn Navy Yard next week. Visiting officers, press, photographers, a perfect display of strength." He lifts his glass. "And like all displays," he says, "it is fragile." The ex-cop whistles. "How do you know this?" he asks. Kroeger's eyes flick toward Anthony for a fraction of a second. "Men talk," he says. "Pride loosens tongues. Somewhere, someone wanted to boast that an admiral would be walking his docks. Now we know too." Anthony keeps his face carefully blank as he pours another round. He did not say a word about the inspection. He does not have to. Once the Navy decides to polish something, the whole waterfront hums with it. Crews called in on weekends, extra paint, extra flags. Rumors spread faster than orders. But hearing it here, in this room, in Kroeger's voice, turns it from gossip into something sharp enough to draw blood. An inspection means exactly what the German says: high-ranking officers, press photographers, civilian officials, civilians in suits walking where only workers and sailors usually tread. More targets, more pressure, more risk. This inspection, one of the businessmen says slowly, they will have more guards, no? More eyes. More eyes looking out, Kroeger replies. Not down, not at one more crate on one more truck, not at one more familiar face walking through a side gate. They will be watching the Admiral's medals, the flash bulbs, the banners. He leans forward, cigarette burning between his fingers. "We do not need to blow up the yard," he says. "We only need to show the world that it can burn." The room goes quiet. This is the moment it stops being theory, even for the bravest idiots at the table. This is the moment when some of them finally see what a small fire in the right place really means. "Damage the dry dock," one man mutters. "Hit the fuel," another says. "Hit the symbol," Kroeger corrects softly. "Hit something that looks good in photographs when it is standing, and looks even better when it is broken." Anthony sets down the bottle. His hands are steady. He is almost proud of that. "Where?" the ex-cop asks. Coarger smiles without warmth. That, he says, is a secret for a smaller circle. His eyes move across the table, weighing, measuring. Anthony feels the gaze pass over him like a searchlight. You, Coarger says, tapping the table in front of the ex-cop, the scrap dealer, the coal truck owner. Stay. The rest of you go upstairs, drink, laugh, be seen. If anyone ever talks about this meeting, it will be you three they remember, not us. Chairs scrape. Men get up, grumbling, masking relief with bravado. As Anthony turns to follow them out, Coarger's voice stops him. Not you, Tony. 3 words. A steel bar slammed across the door of his life. He turns back slowly. The room is smaller now. Fewer eyes. More danger. You have 2 bars to stock, Coarger says. Upstairs you pour for drunks. Down here you pour for men with decisions to make. Do not confuse the two. Anthony forces a crooked grin. As long as they all pay their tabs, I do not care, he says. The door to the main bar closes behind the last man. The muffled noise above becomes a distant, irrelevant sea. Down here, under bare bulbs and yellow smoke, the war shrinks to one table. Coarger sets his glass down. There will be 3 movements, he says, as if discussing a piece of music. 1 at the yard, 1 at the power station, 1 elsewhere, to confuse the response. Elsewhere, the ex-cop repeats. A warehouse, Coarger says. A bridge, a train. It does not matter. Something that makes the authorities chase shadows, while the real damage settles. The coal man frowns. 2 big targets at once, he says. That is ambitious. That is necessary, Coarger answers. A punch with 1 fist can be blocked. A punch with 2 cannot. He looks at Anthony. You will confirm the inspection date, he says. You will listen. You will hear whether the admiral comes alone or with friends, whether there will be a band, whether the newspapers send their best photographers, or just the ones they can spare. He picks up his cigarette again. Men talk to you, he says. They do not talk to policemen. They do not talk to officers. They talk to the man who refills their glass when their hands shake because their son is on a ship they just refitted. They talk to you because you look like them. Anthony's throat feels tight. What happens at Hellgate? He asks, before he can stop himself. Coarger's gaze sharpens. You are sentimental about power plants now? He asks. I am sentimental about lights, Anthony says. I like seeing what might be coming. Good, Coarger replies. Then imagine what it will feel like when they go out. Sirens, shouting, men running in the dark. The city will show its fear. We will see where it glows brightest. That is where their war effort is strongest. He lets the image hang. An acquaintance of ours has friends at the station, he continues. Maintenance men, electricians. Some miss the old country's order. Some simply miss money. A small device in the right control room at the right time. Not to destroy, to disrupt. So why hit both on the same day? The scrap dealer asks. You could do 1 this month, 1 next month, spread the fear. Fear spreads fast, Coarger says. But courage recovers faster. We do not give them time to adapt. We hit when they are proud, when the admiral smiles for the cameras. They will remember that day differently for the rest of their lives. Anthony hears the shape of the plan now. Inspection day, Navy Yard, Hellgate, some 3rd wound somewhere else to muddy the blood trail. He also hears something else under the calm words. Urgency. Soon, Coarger says again. This war does not wait. Later, after the details crumble into posturing and boasts, after the last glass is emptied and the men file out into the night full of treason and cheap liquor, Anthony slips into the alleyway to breathe. The air tastes like coal smoke and river damp. 2 blocks away, under a single yellow street lamp, a figure waits, collar up, hat low. Donnelly! Anthony walks past without looking at him. At the corner, he pauses to light a cigarette. The flame briefly illuminates his face. Behind him, footsteps fall into rhythm with his. They do not speak until they are 3 turns away, swallowed by tenement shadows and laundry lines. "Well?" Donnelly asks. Anthony tells him. Not in a rush, not in a panic. Piece by piece, like setting explosives. Careful, steady, knowing that one wrong touch blows the whole thing to hell. Inspection. 3 movements. Navy Yard as centerpiece. Hell Gate at the same time. A third unknown to scatter the response. As he talks, the corners of Donnelly's composure peel away. An inspection, Donnelly says when he is done, of all the rotten luck. Publicity, Anthony says. Flags, brass, cameras. Looks good on the front page. Looks even better to Berlin if it goes wrong. They stop in the lee of a closed storefront. Neon flickers above them. Somewhere, a radio plays a swing tune, muffled by walls. How locked is the date? Donnelly asks. Locked enough that the waterfront is buzzing, Anthony says. You cannot cancel without questions. You cannot keep it, and pretend everything is fine if you know what I just told you. Good, Donnelly says automatically. Then, a beat later, bad. Christ. For the first time since Anthony met him, the agent looks genuinely trapped. If we cancel, he says slowly, we tip our hand. Somebody whispers in the wrong ear that the inspection was called off without reason. Berlin hears it, and they know we are inside their house. If you do not cancel, Anthony says, an admiral walks into a place that is now officially on fire. What if we move it? Donnelly mutters. Bring it forward. Push it back. Change ships. Bring more Marines onto the yard. You move it too much, Anthony says, and the same whisper problem happens. Somebody whose cousin works on the yard wonders out loud why the big day shuffled twice. Somebody mentions it at the wrong bar. Somebody else listens. You're German, Donnelly says. If we scare him even a little, he goes underground. He changes the channel. We lose everything. He rubs his eyes. Foxworth is going to love this, he adds bitterly. They walk again. Lights smear across rain-slick pavement. A streetcar rattles by, packed with night shift workers. Anthony watches their faces, tired, blank, unaware that strangers a few blocks away have been choosing days on which they might die. What about Hellgate? Anthony asks. You got anyone in there like you got me in the bar? Like you got O'Rourke on the docks? Donnelly shakes his head once. Different beast, he says. They run that place like a monastery. Tight crew. Long years. You do not just walk a bartender or a barber into a control room. So we are blind, Anthony says. Not completely, Donnelly replies. We have a few ears. People on the periphery, maintenance contractors, delivery drivers. Nothing like what we have with you. He looks up at the jagged line of smokestacks, faintly visible against the low clouds to the north. If they touch that place, he says, the city is going to learn very quickly how fragile it is. Anthony feels the urge to say something, cutting, something like, then maybe it should learn. The anger that Kjarger prodded earlier still glows hot. But the thought of entire neighborhoods going black in an instant pulls the words back. You going to tell Foxworth tonight? He asks. I am going to wake him up, Donnelly says. Men like him hate being surprised. Tonight, he will hate it more than usual. He starts to move away, then stops. "You did good," he says, quietly. "Again. I know that does not help when you are looking at those faces in there, but it is the truth." Anthony blows smoke toward the gutter. "They want me to pick the day for them," he says. Donnelly's head snaps back. "What?" "They want a day when it hurts the most," Anthony says. "They want me to listen for when important ships are in, when officers are on deck, when inspectors walk the docks." Donnelly swears under his breath. "Of course they do," he says. "They are not just using your ears. They are using your conscience. You tell them a quiet day, they know you are soft. You tell them a busy day, you help them. Either way, you look involved." Anthony flicks ash into the street. "So what do?" he asks. "Pick a day when no ships I like are there? Pick a day when only strangers die?" "You stall," Donnelly says. "You drag your feet. You tell them you hear different things every night. You blame drunk sailors. You say nobody knows anything for sure. You do what you have been doing since you signed up with us. You survive." "And when they stop accepting stalling?" Anthony asks. Donnelly does not answer. He does not have to. The question hangs between them like a noose. Across town, in that same cramped office, Marta Vogel stares at a new letter. It is from a cultural association in Queens, requesting funds for a patriotic rally to support families of workers in essential industries. The rhetoric is thick with harmless phrases, but the names at the bottom are not harmless at all. One she recognizes from a list of suspected Nazi sympathizers. Another from a list the Federal Bureau of Investigation sent her in invisible ink, names to watch for in incoming mail. And a third matches the man Anthony described in passing when Donnelly last visited, one of the quiet businessmen in the back room. She copies the names into her hidden notebook, her hand cramping. Beside them, she adds a date. The same week as the inspection. On the docks, under the arc lights, Patrick O'Rourke walks past rows of steel hulls. He counts cranes, listens to foremen bark orders, hears welders curse failing equipment. He hears something else, too, in the snatches of conversation. The word inspection dropped like a brick into the middle of sentences. "If they are bringing the brass," one worker grumbles, "maybe they will finally fix the toilets." "If they are bringing the newspapers," another says, "maybe they will stop pretending we are overpaid." O'Rourke stops by a posting board. Someone tacked up a preliminary schedule. It is incomplete, subject to change, written in hand, so bad it looks like a doctor's prescription. But the date is there. He stares at it until the numbers burn into his vision. Then he folds the memory down into the same place he used to keep safe house addresses and arms drops in Belfast. That night, in a church basement that smells of old coffee and candle wax, O'Rourke finds a payphone that almost never works for anyone else and makes a call with too many rings and no name spoken at the end. A man's voice answers with a single word that is not his own name. They speak in plain English about a delivery and a visitor and a day when the foreman wears his Sunday suit. Somewhere else, that message gets written down without the decoration. Only the bare bones that matter. In a small apartment, Anthony sits at his table, staring at the wall. The radio mutters about the Pacific, about Marines fighting on islands with names he cannot pronounce, about bombers over Europe, about victory gardens and rationing and the need to buy more war bonds. None of it mentions that, in one city on one coast, a handful of people are quietly deciding Whether an admiral will stand on a dock that may or may not still be there when he leaves. There is a knock at the door. 3 short taps. Not trouble this time. Foxworth steps in without ceremony when Anthony opens. He looks older than he did the last time, as if words passed to him over a late-night phone line have added years. "You know already," Anthony says. "I know enough," Foxworth replies. "Sit." They sit at the same kitchen table where the photographs of the ring once lay. "This is where we are," Foxworth says without preamble. "We have confirmation of the inspection date from 2 sources. One on the yard, one in the Navy office. We have indications that your German plans to use that date. We have rumors of unusual inquiries around the power station. We have hints of a third operation we cannot yet see." He folds his hands. "We have, in other words, a storm. We can see the clouds. We can feel the pressure. We cannot yet say where the first lightning will hit." Anthony waits. He knows something is coming. Some decision. Some line. "We have 3 options," Foxworth says. "First, we cancel the inspection. We manufacture an excuse, illness, logistics, weather, whatever. We accept that Berlin will likely learn, through their channels, that something spooked us. We preserve the Admiral's life, the ship's, the yard. We lose our place inside their house." He counts off a finger. "Second, we keep the inspection exactly as planned. We flood the yard with agents and plainclothes men. We search every crate we can without causing a panic. We watch every face we can. We accept that we might miss something. We gamble that we are better at their game than they are." Another finger. "Third, we adjust. Not enough to shout, just enough to whisper. We shift times. We shuffle routes. We place our own crate somewhere they did not expect and see who comes close. We turn their plan into bait for ours." He looks up. "None of these are good," he says. "All of them risk lives. All of them risk your life." "You looking for my vote?" Anthony asks quietly. "I am looking for your reality," Foxworth says. "Agents in suits can talk all night in that office. You are the one in the room with the wolf." Anthony thinks of Quagger's eyes, of the way he speaks about fear, of the way he takes pride not in blood, but in disruption. "He wants a spectacle," Anthony says. "He wants a story. You cancel, you give him a story. The mighty Americans, so afraid of us, they hide their admirals. He will sell that to his bosses as a victory. He already is a victory," Foxworth mutters. "He is in your head. He is in mine. You keep everything the same. He smells something, too," Anthony continues. "He expects some reaction. He is not stupid. He has to know this kind of thing is risky. If he sees no change at all, he might hold back, or he might think he is invincible." "And the third option?" Foxworth asks. Anthony hesitates. "Can you really put your own bait on the yard?" he asks. "With all those people, with an admiral, with the press." Foxworth's mouth tightens. "We have done worse in quieter times," he says. "Left things out to see who touches them. But this is different." They sit in silence. In the distance, barely audible, a ship horn sounds on the river. Finally, Anthony speaks. "He told me to find him a day," he says. "He thinks I will hand him a gift. You change the inspection too much, and I do not know what I look like to him anymore. You cancel it, and I look like a bartender who suddenly knows too much." "You want us to keep it," Foxworth says slowly. "I want you to use it," Anthony replies. "For once, you know what day they are looking at. How many times in this war do you get that?" Foxworth's eyes darken. "You understand what you are saying," he says. You are asking us to turn a day with an admiral on the docks into a trap. If we succeed, nobody will ever know. If we fail, everyone will. Anthony shrugs, though it feels like lifting a weight. You signed up to keep the country safe, he says. I got dragged into this because men like Quarger walked into my bar. None of this is fair. Fair left the building in 1933. Foxworth stands. We will make a decision by morning, he says. Whatever we choose, you go back in. You keep doing what you are doing. You listen. You live. You buy us minutes, hours, whatever you can steal. He pauses at the door. And Anthony, he adds, if we choose wrong, you may see the flash before we hear it. The door closes. Alone again, Anthony goes to the window. The city sprawls below, all brick and light and motion. Somewhere out there, Sal DeLuca is closing his shop, sweeping hair into a neat pile, wondering which of the men he shaved today will live to need another. Somewhere, O'Rourke lies on his back in a cheap room, staring at a ceiling stained with old leaks, replaying the numbers on that schedule until they are no longer numbers, but a looming wall. Somewhere, Marta presses her notebook flat under her mattress, the ink still wet on the page with the inspection week circled. In another city across an ocean, a German officer in a tidy office reads a cable from New York, nods once, and writes a single word in the margin. Genehmigt. Approved. The countdown has started. Nobody on the street below knows it. The city's heartbeat stays steady. For now. The day dawns like any other victory photograph. Clear sky. Cold air. Flags already hanging limp over the yard, waiting for the admiral. On the Brooklyn waterfront, cranes rise against the light like a forest of steel. Sirens howl the start of shift. Men stream through the Navy Yard gates, lunch pails swinging, breath steaming. Nobody outside a small, exhausted circle of people knows that today is supposed to be the day everything breaks. Anthony stands behind the bar, hands wrapped around a coffee cup he does not drink. He has not slept. Foxworth and Donnelly made their choice before sunrise. They did not say the word trap, but the shape of it was there. The inspection stays. Security doubles. Searches tighten. Plainclothes agents scatter through the yard like salt. And still, the gates open. If they are wrong, an admiral will walk into a killing ground. If they are right, someone else will. The back room feels different when Anthony unlocks it. Not thicker, not darker, just more deliberate. The sense that every chair has been placed, every ashtray considered. Somewhere in an upstairs apartment, a German code clerk has already logged a message. Plan proceeds. By mid-morning, the first sign arrives. Not in the bar, on the docks. Patrick O'Rourke watches a line of trucks crawl toward the yard. His breath lifts in small white bursts. The harbor wind cuts through his coat. He scans the painted markings on each truck, ticking off names and numbers in his mind. Coal, timber, food. Then he sees it. A familiar company logo on the side of a truck that never comes on this day of the week. A number on the manifest that does not match what the foreman muttered earlier. A crate size just off from what the paperwork suggests. The driver is a stranger. That, more than anything, makes O'Rourke's stomach turn. He walks along the pier, casual, one more dock worker killing time between loads. The truck rolls up to the checkpoint. The guard on duty is one O'Rourke knows, a man who likes extra cigarettes and hates extra work. The guard glances at the manifest. His eyes flick to the crate list. For one terrible second, it looks like he will just wave the truck through. Then another man steps up beside him. Plain suit? Plain hat? Eyes that do not miss much? Federal. The suit leans in, says something low. The guard's face twists. Annoyance fights with fear. Annoyance loses. They wave the truck over to the side. O'Rourke keeps walking. He does not break stride. He does not look back. He has done his part. He walked this route with Donnelly in his head for days, listing who takes bribes, who looks lazy, who just wants to live. Somewhere in those long, late talks, Donnelly chose which checkpoint gets a partner today. One truck, one crate, one chance. In the bar, lunchtime brings the usual crowd. Workers from nearby factories, clerks in cheap suits, a couple of sailors on liberty. The radio behind the counter crackles with a cheerful announcer describing the Admiral's visit to the yard. Big day for Brooklyn. Big day for the war effort. Anthony's insides feel like glass. He scans every face that comes through the door, waiting for one in particular. When Kay Arger finally arrives, he is alone. No entourage, no loud conspirators. Just a gray suit, a neat hat, a calm expression that has sent men to prison, to graves, to ships they did not know were doomed. He does not go to the back room. He sits at the bar. Busy day? He asks. Everyone wants to drink to the Admiral, Anthony says. Or drink so they can forget the Admiral gets paid to look at ships they built. Quarger's smile does not touch his eyes. People like to see uniforms, he says. It makes them believe someone is in control. He orders a whiskey. Neat. Anthony pours. His hands do not shake. You working today? Anthony asks lightly. Or just supervising from a distance? Always working, Quarger says. Sometimes work looks like paper. Sometimes it looks like drinking. Sometimes it looks like waiting to see if other men do their jobs. There it is. The first hint that, somewhere else in the city, things are moving. At Hellgate Power Station, a maintenance man with 20 years of service clears his throat and tells his supervisor he needs to check a reading in a side room. He walks down a corridor that smells of oil and ozone. His toolbox feels too heavy in his hand. In the bottom of that box, wrapped in rags, is a device he did not build. A device he half understands. A device he was promised would only send a message. He does not see the two men watching him from a balcony above, clipboards in hand, hard hats on their heads. They look like engineers. They are not. One of them lifts a walkie, uses a word that means now. In the Navy Yard, the Admiral steps onto the main dock. Cameras pop. A brass band somewhere tries to make itself heard over the clang of metal and the shout of work orders. Civilians in suits cluster around him like smaller ships around a battleship. Foxworth stands in the shadow of a warehouse, hat down, coat collar up. He looks like any senior bureaucrat trying not to be jostled. His eyes never stop moving. He knows where O'Rourke is supposed to be. He knows where his agents are supposed to stand. He knows, in a general sense, where the danger might come from. He also knows that general senses do not stop explosions. His radio crackles once in his pocket. A prearranged phrase about a misdelivered package, truck, checkpoint, side inspection. He breathes. Not easier. Just more focused. In a fenced-off corner of the yard, away from the cameras, 3 men stand by the truck O'Rourke watched. 2 wear uniforms. 1 wears a suit. The crate sits on the back, anonymous, wood and nails and paint. The suit, an ordnance man borrowed from the army, runs practiced fingers along the edges. Could be nothing, he says. Could be someone playing games with inventory. Or, the younger guard asks. Or someone thought we still run this place like we did 2 months ago, the ordnance man says. He taps the side of the crate. "Get me a crowbar," he says. Back at the bar, the radio announcer's tone shifts mid-sentence. And here we see the Admiral greeting workers from, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we are receiving word of a minor security matter at—" The voice cuts. Static. Anthony's heart stutters. He glances at Korager. The German's head tilts, just slightly, toward the speaker. "Technical issues," Anthony says. "Happens." "Does it?" Korager asks softly. In the power station side room, the maintenance man sets his toolbox down. His hands shake as he unwraps the device. It is smaller than a lunch pail. Ordinary looking, if you do not know what to look for. A dial, a battery, wires. Just a message, the man who gave it to him had said in a quiet cafe weeks ago. No one gets hurt. Light goes out. They panic. You get paid. He reminds himself of that now. No one gets hurt. Just a message. He moves toward the control cabinet. The door opens behind him. "Joe," a voice says, "you are not cleared for that panel." He turns. 2 engineers stand there. One holds a clipboard. One holds a badge with a seal he did not think he would ever see up close. His brain scrambles for lies, for excuses. None come. In the yard, the crate splits with a crack of wood under the crowbar. Inside, instead of machine parts, neat rows of metal cylinders nestle in straw. Not enough to blow up the yard, but enough to send a fireball and splinters through a crowd, to make a dock full of men run, to turn a day of pride into a day of screaming. The young guard swears. "Is it live?" he gasps. "Not yet," the ordnance man says grimly. "But it could be. Get everyone back, now." He does not shout. Shouting brings the wrong kind of attention. He simply grabs the guard's arm and hauls him away. "Who signed this manifest?" he asks. The guard names a foreman. The suit writes it down. In the bar, the radio sputters back to life. Repeat. No cause for public alarm. A delivery error at the Navy Yard is under investigation, but the Admiral's schedule continues as planned. Anthony feels the room shift. Most customers barely look up. A delivery error is nothing to them. Something to joke about later. To one man at the bar, it is a gunshot. Korager's expression does not change much. A slight hardening around the eyes. A tightening of the mouth. "Delivery error," he repeats. "Probably someone sent the Admiral the wrong brand of cigars," Anthony says, too quickly. Korager finishes his drink in a single swallow. "No more today," he says. "I have things to attend to." He stands, leaves money on the bar, and walks out. Anthony waits 5 seconds. 10? Then he calls to the kid working the front. "Watch the bar," he says. "I am taking a break." He slips into the alley, heart pounding against his ribs. Donnelly is already there. "How bad?" Anthony asks. "Bad enough," Donnelly says. "We got 1 crate. We do not know if there were supposed to be 2 or 3. The device at the power station never made it to the panel. The man folded when he saw a badge, thank God. But someone got far enough in to hand it to him in the first place." "Korager?" Anthony asks. "Too careful to put his hands on anything," Donnelly says. "Our best shot at tying this to anyone with a German passport is through you." Anthony laughs once, sharply. "Then you are in trouble," he says. He is already moving. The radio spooked him. Donnelly nods toward the street. "Foxworth has people at every exit from the yard," he says. "Agents on the power station. We can roll up the men around the truck. We can squeeze the maintenance man until he names every friend he ever had coffee with. But the higher you go, the thinner the air gets. And there you are, somewhere in the middle, with his trust, or what is left of it." You want me to bring him in here? Anthony demands. Offer him a free drink and a pair of handcuffs? I want you to stay alive long enough to see what he does next, Donnelly says. People like him do not just disappear. They make mistakes when their plan cracks. They reach for phones, for faces, for money. He grabs Anthony's shoulder. Listen, he says. What we did today? Stopping that crate? Stopping that device? That already saved lives. Maybe dozens, maybe hundreds. But if all we do is cut off the fingers and never reach the hand, they will grow new fingers. Anthony stares at him. You knew this might happen, he says. You knew you might have to choose between catching the bomb and catching the man. That is this job, Donnelly says, quietly. You think I like it? On the other side of the river, the lights in the power station flicker once, briefly. Technicians curse, stabilize, move on. The city barely notices. A tremor in a giant body too busy to feel a pinprick. In a quiet office uptown, someone from Naval Intelligence reads a preliminary report on the delivery error. The language is careful. The conclusions are not. Words like sabotage and inside assistance appear between the lines. In a tenement apartment, Marta Vogel hears a knock. Not the light, familiar tap of her landlord. A firmer rhythm. Institutional. She opens the door to two men with badges. Miss Vogel? One asks. We have some questions about your employer's correspondence. Her first instinct is panic. Her second is calculation. If they are here as enemies, it is over. If they are here as allies, it is beginning. Hours later, in an interrogation room that smells of old coffee and fear, a foreman from the yard sweats under a single bulb. He insists he only signed papers. He insists he never opened a crate. He insists he did not know the man who brought him the extra manifest. Names start to surface. None of them are Martin Kieriger. For men like him, there is always one more layer, one more buffer. By nightfall, the papers have the story, not the real story. A small article on page 3 about heightened security and a suspicious shipment intercepted at Brooklyn Navy Yard. No mention of admirals, no mention of power stations, no mention of immigrant bartenders, barbers, dock workers, or secretaries. The city moves on. The band plays at the Admiral's dinner. Politicians toast our vigilant forces at home. In a different bar across town, far from Anthony's, 3 of the men who once sat at his table drink in tight, angry silence. One grumbles about bad luck. Another mutters about loose tongues. A third says nothing, because he plans to take a train north tonight and not come back. Kieriger is not with them. He is in a rented room above a quiet street, listening to a shortwave radio turned low. The German voice on the other end reads standard news from Europe. Victories, losses, speeches. Between those words, in the gaps, are codes. He has already sent his own report. Local operation compromised, assets exposed, further activity not recommended at this time. It is not a confession of failure. It is a claim of partial success. They forced the Americans to show their hand. They proved there are cracks in the armor. They did not get their explosion, but they did get their data. Men like him can sell that. He lights a cigarette, inhales, exhales a long stream of smoke toward the ceiling. He thinks of the bartender. He thinks of the little hesitation when the radio message cut out. He thinks of anger and wit and eyes that see more than they should. Somewhere in his calculation, a new column appears. Risk. He will either bring this man closer, or he will cut him loose. He has not decided yet. In Anthony's apartment, Foxworth speaks without his usual distance. "We stopped it," he says. "Not cleanly, not elegantly, but we stopped it. No crater in the yard, no blackout, no dead admiral. That counts." "It counts to them," Anthony asks. "The ones who signed the crate? The one who handed the box to that maintenance man? They going to jail, or just to a quieter room?" "They will go somewhere," Foxworth says. "Maybe a courtroom, maybe a camp, maybe somewhere no one writes about in the papers. The point is, they will not be here to try again." He looks tired. Not just from the day, from the weight of what cannot be said. "The rest," he adds, "is shadows, whispers. We will chase them. We will cut off more fingers. Maybe one day we will grab the hand. But if you are waiting for a moment when this all feels complete, you will die waiting." Anthony thinks of the map that started all this. Brooklyn Navy Yard, Hell Gate, a third mark they never fully saw. He thinks of all the days before this one, when nobody knew there was almost a new entry in the city's list of disasters. "So what am I?" he asks quietly. "After today, a guy who poured drinks while other men carried crates?" "You are the reason they were carrying crates into a net instead of into a crowd," Foxworth says. "You are the reason we heard the word inspection in one room before it turned into a headline in another. You and O'Rourke and DeLuca and Vogel. You four made it possible to stop something that, on paper, should have been unstoppable." He shakes his head. "And nobody will know," Anthony says. "People will know they did not die," Foxworth replies. "They just will not know why." Days become weeks. The war moves on. Headlines shift to other battles, other beaches, other plots. There are real explosions in other cities, other harbors. There are victories and losses, medals and funerals. The story of the almost bomb in New York becomes a thin file in a locked cabinet. Some of the men arrested that day stand trial on technical charges: sabotage, conspiracy. The words sound dry. Their lawyers complain about overreach. The press loses interest. There is a war on, after all. One of them, the maintenance man, takes a deal no one will ever read about. He talks until his throat is raw. He names every name he knows. There are not as many as the Federal Bureau of Investigation hoped. There never are. Cells are small for a reason. He disappears into a system designed for men who must be hidden for their own safety and for everyone else's. The foreman from the yard pleads ignorance. A jury does not fully believe him. He goes away for a few years. His wife moves to her sister's. His kids grow up telling people their father worked for the government. The admiral writes a brief, private memo about commendable domestic vigilance under difficult circumstances. It makes its way, eventually, to a desk in Washington. A note is added in another hand. "Good work by New York office. Maintain pressure." Anthony reads none of this. He goes back to pouring drinks. Sometimes, on slow nights, he looks at the door and wonders if K.R. Ger will walk in again. Sometimes he wonders if the German left the city the same night the crate was opened. Sometimes he wonders if he is still somewhere nearby, watching from a different stool. He still meets Donnelly. Not as often. Not with the same fever. There are other plots to track, other men to watch. The war does not end because one explosion did not happen. Once, months later, Donnelly shows up with a folded piece of paper. "Thought you might want to see this," he says. It is a list of names. Some Anthony recognizes from that back room, some from DeLuca's chair, some from Marta's quiet letters. Next to each name is a status. arrested, deported, under surveillance, unknown. At the bottom, in small, neat handwriting, is a line that is not supposed to mean anything to him. Operation Checkmate, domestic component, considered successful. Enemy sabotage network in New York disrupted prior to execution of major attack. He slides the paper back. Checkmate, huh? He says. Feels more like we knocked over some pieces and kept the board from catching fire. Sometimes that is what checkmate looks like, Donnelly says. The other guy never gets to move his queen the way he wanted. What about the ghosts? Anthony asks. O'Rourke, DeLuca, Vogel. They get a line on a piece of paper somewhere? They get to keep breathing, Donnelly says. Somewhere in this city, some kid is going to grow up with a father who is just a dock worker, instead of a man who died on a bad day. Some woman is going to keep her job because the lights never went out when they should have. That is their citation. Years later, when the war is over and the world has new enemies, the file stays locked. There are bigger stories to tell. Normandy, Iwo Jima, Berlin. The nation wants heroes in uniforms, not in aprons and work coats. The men who sat in that back room and almost turned New York into a headline become footnotes in obscure reports. The ones who stopped them do not even get that. Patrick O'Rourke's back gives out before his secrets do. He retires with a small pension, a bad temper, and a quiet habit of watching every truck that passes his window more carefully than his neighbors think is normal. Sal DeLuca grows older in his shop, cutting the hair of men who never know their father's payday, depended on which direction his razor wiped a towel one night in 1942. Marta Vogel marries a man who never quite understands why she hates locked drawers and unasked questions. She never tells her children about the notebook she burned in the sink when the war ended. And Anthony? Anthony tends bar until the war is something people talk about as back then. Veterans sit on his stools, telling stories about beaches and battleships. He nods in the right places, refills their glasses, never mentions that there was a day when the war almost came to their own harbor, in a way nobody would have understood until it was too late. Every so often, a story appears in a magazine about Nazi spies in America. They mention the saboteurs who landed from U-boats. They mention the German-American Bund rallies. They do not mention a crate at the Brooklyn Navy Yard that never made it to its mark. They do not mention a power station that did not go dark. They do not mention a bartender who laughed at the right jokes and hated himself just enough to keep going. But the city itself remembers, in its own way, in the uninterrupted hum of its lights, in the unbroken line of its skyline, in the fact that when people here talk about the war, they talk about other places, other explosions, other nightmares. They do not talk about the one that almost belonged to them. That is the measure of what the Forgotten Ring accomplished. They did their job so well that history moved on without them. Some victories are parades, some are files in a drawer, and some are a day that never happened, in a city that never knew how close it came to waking up to fire.